G'day guys. At the moment my 3-year-old son is crazy into Thomas and Friends. So we've been looking everywhere for some Thomas toys for him to play with. Now originally I bought him a couple of the Trackmaster trains, which are the motorised trains, and then we also bought some wooden trains. But the ones he turns out he likes the most are the Take and Play toys because they're nice die-cast toys. They have, they're quite a nice size, and he actually likes the fact that you can push them. He doesn't seem to like the motorised trains at this point. He seems to like making up his own adventures with just the push-along trains, and the Take and Play is a really good size and a good weight for his hand size. But funny enough, he's actually been really looking for an Emily. And looking around town, I've been struggling like mad to find an Emily. So once again, I was out today in my local Kmart looking for an Emily when I actually stumbled across these things, which are called Thomas and Friends Minis. Now, I've never actually seen these in store before. They're basically a blind packet, very similar to the Lego minifigures. Now what struck me as unusual is when I first saw these on the shelf, there was no price tag with them. And I just assumed, okay, well minifigures in Australia cost $5, so these must be $5. So I took them to one of the self-scanning devices in Kmart, and actually they scanned at $2.90. And I thought, for $2.90, I thought, let's give it a go. Now, interestingly enough, when I saw these, you can actually feel the packet, and I could feel that they felt like a very similar size to those Thomas toys you could get out of those $2 egg machines. And the quality of those toys I thought was never particularly great, but for kids, it does the job. So I thought, for $2.90, I thought, let's just get a couple and give it a go. And then I sort of was looking at all the different packets and thinking, well, I don't want to get a couple of the same figure for my son. So I figured that, you might actually be able to, like with a Lego bag, you might be able to do a bit of a finger feel. But the actual train designs are all very similar. They've all got two wheels and they've all got a reasonably similar shape. So I thought, well, that's not going to work. So I had a look at the packaging, looking for anything unique. And lo and behold, right in front of me on the front here is a little code. And this particular packet here, for example, says G48A/02. And then as I looked through the bags at all the various different mini packets, I noticed they've all got a different code on them. So I found G47/01, and I figured if it's got 01 in the name, it's probably the first in the series, and the first is always going to be Thomas. So I picked up this one and opened it up, and lo and behold, there was actually a little Thomas the Tank Engine rolling stock in there. And I thought, as I looked at this toy, and this is what I wanted to show you, the actual quality of this toy is, quite frankly, it's really, really good. Now, before I get right into it, I thought I'd show you a bit of a scale. So we did actually, while we were in Kmart, we picked up a Take and Play Thomas. And just to give you an idea in size, there's the Take and Play Thomas, and here is this Thomas and Friends Mini. You can see there, the actual difference is quite staggering. And also, just for another point of reference, here is a standard, $2 Hot Wheels car, and it's once again, it basically is much bigger than this Minis. And the last thing I'd show you is a Lego minifigure. In fact, why don't we just open this one up? Bonus Lego unboxing. And what have we got here? The hot dog guy, of course. Quickly put him together. And there you go, there is a Lego minifigure in comparison. So you can see it's fairly similar size to the minifigure. But what's actually quite amazing is the actual detail on this Thomas, this little Thomas, is surprisingly really good. You can see the face detail there, it's printed very nicely. The plastic has quite a heft to it. In fact, I can't quite tell, but this top section here feels like it's either solid plastic or it's got a little bit of metal inside, because that's actually got more weight than you'd expect from a toy of this such small size. You can see underneath the way the rolling stock works, and interestingly enough, you can just make out there, if it's focusing, you've got a number there. It says G46A Thomas. Now what's actually interesting is, even though that says G46A, the actual bag it came out of was G47A. But anyway, it's interesting that even on these little toys they've decided to put the actual engine names, which is nice because I mean I'm only just getting into the Thomas world myself with my with the interest from my son, and I still don't know all their names. Although even at 3 years old, he seems to know what their names are. But in any case, this also gives you an idea on the coupling system. You've got a peg on the back there, and on the front there you've got the other part of the connection system. The other thing you get in each packet is a little booklet which talks about all the different trains, and it was when I opened this that I got quite a bit of a shock, because there are a lot of different toys of different trains in this series. Now, it doesn't say series 1 anywhere, but presumably it is, but you can see here there's probably in excess of 50 different trains you can collect. And right here at the start, they've all got slightly different categories. So you can see here, this one is metallic, and then you have, this is classics and more classics and more classics. And the classics for me are the ones which, as an adult, I think the classics are really nice. But it's interesting when I tell you later which ones my son liked, that's where it really gets interesting. And on the back here, you've got some dino ones with some dino patterns. What's on this? Does that say Robo? Yeah, Robo, so they have some robot patterns. And then we've got spooky. These ones are quite cool, little Halloween themed ones. And you've got heroes up here. And you've also got races and neon. It'll be interesting to see what they look like. And right down the bottom here, we've got chili or chillin' and old school. So they're just black and white engines. What's quite interesting is as I was reading this instruction manual, this booklet, it says at the top here, some not available until fall. Now presumably that's referring to North America's fall. So I imagine that in all the boxes that are available right now, you won't actually be able to get this entire series. So I went back to Kmart and I decided to pick up a couple of boxes they had on the shelf. Now I couldn't get a full box. It would have been good to get a full box and show you what's in a full box. But what I could get was about 40 odd of the actual minis. And my son and I opened about, what have we got here? We've got about 8 of them. So as we opened them, I started recording what the different numbers meant. And this is where things got a bit confusing. For example, where you had G47A, 01 was Thomas, and that made sense. But then, for example, 08 was Henry. That doesn't quite make sense in a numerical order. The next one here, which is a diesel, is number 16. And then they sort of started going all over the place. Number 12 was down here, which is diesel 10, I believe. And then you had, the numbers basically were all over the place. But in any case, the first 10, or the first 8 which I opened, this is the first 8 we received. I'm not going to go through every single packet here in detail, but one thing I wanted to show you was a couple of different types. So if I start with, this is Percy, obviously. This is one of the spooky themed trains. You can see there that he's covered in bandages. Even the wheels are covered in bandages, and I thought that's quite a nice little touch. And similarly, we have Emily here. And funnily enough, we actually got an Emily for my son. This is the Emily we got so far. And Emily here has some chains and some spiders on her, which is quite cool. So another spooky themed one. And this is one of those races. I believe this is Gordon. And you can see there he's got some very American looking stripes on him. And this is, I don't actually know what this engine is. I suppose it'll be underneath. So Victor. So he's actually dressed up in the superhero costumes, and he actually looks really cool. And then you've got some of the standard. These are the classic ones. These are the ones which I quite like. There's a diesel there, and that's of course actually that's Henry, I believe. And then this is one of those metallic ones. So you can see there, it's the same designed engine, but it's got a metallic red paint on it. It actually looks really, really nice. That's a lot of nice detail, and the metallic paint looks really good at this scale. And one other thing which really surprised me is the way these couplings work is basically you lift one engine up and you just hook that over the top there and away you go. And what's interesting is they've got enough weight, and the actual rolling stock is designed in such a way that they roll really nicely. And my son was hooking all of these on, and he really liked this coupling because it was really easy to just hook that one on. So one thing which was really nice is, he hooked on all 8 of these, and they work really well, just surprisingly well. Now, I don't actually have much Thomas track at the moment, so I couldn't tell you if this works on any track system or anything like that. But one thing which is unusual is you can see underneath the actual, not sure what you'd call this part here, the running board maybe, but it's really low to the ground. There's only really about 2 millimeters of clearance between the wheels and the actual, I don't think that's a running board, but basically the chassis of the train. There's only 2 mils of clearance. And I'm not sure why that's designed that way, whether or not there's going to be some future adapter which will hook into this little square there. That's what it looks like, but I'm not really sure. It'd be interesting to find out. So it's interesting in terms of value for money. For example, the take and play Thomases here in Australia cost about between $9 to $11, and the larger trains, like for example James with the tender, they're generally between $17 to $20 here in Australia. Whereas these things here, like I said before, they cost me $2.90. So it's funny when you compare the value between a take and play train at $10, you can basically get 3 of these little toys. And the good thing is the larger rolling stock is still represented as a small, just the same size carriage. So for my son, for his playing, this basically is as good as the Henry that you would get, the large scale Henry, but it's the same thing, but it only costs $3. And and then it goes on to further things, like for example, I know that Lego is an expensive toy, but that Lego minifigure at $5 compared to one of these Thomas Friends at $2.90. It's just, there's probably a similar amount of plastic and engineering that's gone into both of these toys. And I just think that the actual train for a child probably represents better value, and it may represent better play value depending on what your child's into. So I am a collector. I'm into Lego and quite a few different various things. I'm not actually a Thomas collector, but my son is really into it. And it's funny, these things combine for me the joy of collecting, the joy of playing with my son, and the joy of trains, all in one what I think is a fairly cheap format to do that in. So in any case, let me know, have you guys seen these in your stores? What are you being charged for these mini packets where you live? I'd be interested to know if they're cheaper around the world or more expensive. And I'd be interested to know, have you guys found any of these metallic ones? Is the numbering system working for you? Things like that. Are there any trains, for example, which you're having trouble finding? Because I'm sure these things, like anything, will be good to trade, and I'm sure that people will start selling these on eBay, especially if people get wind of any rare ones. Okay, I've been through both of these boxes and I've pulled out all the unique trains. So I've worked out a couple of different things. I believe that each box probably comes with about 20 figures, so I had 40 figures all up here. And out of those 40 figures, I ended up with 18 unique trains, and I ended up with 22 double-ups. I actually got out a couple of new figures which I thought I'd quickly show you. For example, this one here is Paxton, and this is he comes from the Chilling line. Just show you that one there. He's basically almost a see-through plastic. He's not quite see-through, but he's just basically all white with a little bit of yellow on him. I also got this one here, which is a Diesel, and Diesel is from the Old School line. So there you go. He's essentially just like a black and white old school film. And the next one we have is Toby. Now Toby is done up in this neon look here, and he actually looks pretty interesting. So he's very colourful. I imagine kids would quite like these neon styled trains. He really does stand out with that bright blue and the bright green and that fluoro orange. So yeah, a nice looking train. So one last one I thought I'd show you is Devious Diesel 10. So you can see, once again, he's quite an interesting adaptation on the actual engine. His face doesn't look particularly devious, but it definitely does look like Devious Diesel 10. Quite a nice looking character, I think. I thought it'd be an interesting comparison to mention that 18 of these trains cost about 52 Australian dollars, and for $50 you probably get one, fairly small to medium sized Thomas playset, and then it really makes me wonder, would a child have more fun and get more play out of getting 18 different trains with various patterns on them and different scenarios so they could play out all different scenes? Or will they get more fun out of one playset with maybe 1 or 2 trains that it comes with? But in any case, if you have any questions, please let me know. These things really impressed me, and I thought, it's not my usual YouTube video, but I really wanted to bring it and share what I've found because my son absolutely loves these. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, let me know. But until next time, bye for now. Now, interestingly, so what I did was I went back to Kmart and double fail.